So today is a very historical moment. This is our first Carbon Markets Forum, Global and India Perspectives, powered by CBC Carbon X Hub, the new hub that we created last year, together with our partners from Advait, with Avantika, with Mr. Shalin from Ahmedabad. And I spent also 5 weeks in Ahmedabad this year. So we are brainstorming a lot and also worked quite a lot on the concept. And why does it make sense actually to introduce carbon markets? Yes, because it's natural selling point for us, for our clean tech, clean water, and clean hydrogen industry to get more customers. Yes, because we can propose them more revenue from their projects. And of course, for our customers, it's great because besides having cheaper energy or more affordable energy, they can also have additional revenue stream. Plus, as we work a lot with the emerging countries, economies like Cambodia, for example, this is also another revenue stream for the countries on their natural resources. So I would like to now invite Avantika once again. Actually, you are coming on your behalf, no, not on behalf of Mr. Shalin. I would like to thank and give applause to Avantika also because it's her who was working very hard on the concept of the Carbon X Hub and also gives us a lot of inspiration. Avantika, so please take your microphone and I invite you to make the introductory address. Can we change to the presentation of Avantika, please?
Okay. Hi once again, everybody. I'd first of all like to thank the organizer and strategic partners for having us here, and especially Thomas for making Carbon a part of the CBC club. I will take it quickly because of shortage of time. So my agenda would be to introduce you to carbon markets, what exactly carbon markets are, and what potential does they have. So can I have?
I like so much the switcher I forgot to give you. Who has the switcher has the power.
Okay, a little bit about myself. So, I'm heading the carbon markets division with Advait Energy Transitions Limited. We're based out of Ahmedabad. A little bit about Advait Energy Transitions Limited. So, basically, we started typically into the power transmission solution as consultants and then traders of the products of the power transmission. And now we are manufacturing some niche products from the power transmission solution. So, we are manufacturing OPGW, HTLS, ERS, which is our indigenous patented product, emergency restoration system, stringing tools, etc. And recently we also ventured basically into the green energy sector, wherein we started with the EPC of the green hydrogen. So we have successfully carried out 2 green hydrogen projects in India. And then we started manufacturing of the electrolyzers. So we are also incentivized by the government of India to manufacture 300 megawatt of electrolyzer. Then we also wanted to look after the supply chain of the green hydrogen. So we are catering to that entire supply chain of the green hydrogen. We are capable of providing an entire solution. We're also going to start manufacturing of our green hydrogen and its derivative powered fuel cells for stationary, mobility and shipping applications starting next year onwards. Then we are also into battery energy storage and my division, which is carbon markets and sustainability division. All right, quickly. So why net zero can't wait? So I think we are all aware of the circumstances and the consequences of climate change that we've been facing. And I think it's quite clear that climate change is real, global warming is real. And we've already crossed the emission level of 53.2 gigatons of CO2 equivalent GHG emissions in 2024, and it's increasing every year. Now, what should be the rate of decarbonization to meet our 2030 targets to stay below 1.5 degrees centigrade compared to the pre-industrial level? It should be 17.2%. And it's very shocking to know that our current rate of decarbonization is only 1.4%, which is drastically lower than the expected rate of decarbonization that we must be achieving to meet our targets. And talking about the emission gaps, even after the current policies, current actions, current incentives, frameworks, etc., we'd not be able to achieve our target of 2030 global warming targets. There's about 23 to 25 gigatons target gap, emission gap is there with the current policy that we have in the system. Now, to take care of the decarbonization, we talk about a lot of instruments. There's technology, policy, etc. In that, carbon markets has an important role to play, and that we'll see towards the next slides. I'd like to tell you a bit about carbon markets. So carbon markets is basically a mechanism. It's a mechanism to basically incentivize the green projects, clean projects, or projects which are in any way doing any sort of emission aversion, maybe emission removal, absorption. So it's a way to incentivize these projects and at the same time penalize or regulate the emission intensive sectors. So it's a mechanism which has been introduced by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and has been in place since about 1990s. There are two types of carbon markets typically. One is compliance, second is the voluntary. In the compliance carbon markets, the government usually put a cap on the emission targets, and there's an internal mechanism of the trading of the emissions. And the second kind of market is a voluntary carbon market, where voluntarily, if you are taking up any clean or green project, you can get the carbon credits issued, you can trade them and fetch some extra revenue to make your project feasible. So these are the two kind of mechanisms that are typically there in the carbon market. Now, carbon credits is a major tool in the carbon markets. So what are carbon credits? Carbon credits are the tradable certificates. In India, SEBI has defined it as a commodity derivative. One carbon credit is equivalent to 1 ton of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emission reduction, aversion, avoidance, absorption done. So basically, for example, you have any sort of, let's say, green hydrogen project and you're doing X amount of emission reduction. So your project can liable to get the X, if it's doing X tons of CO2 equivalent GHG emissions, you'd be able to get X carbon credits for your project, and we'd be able to trade them internationally. Now, the trading in the voluntary carbon market happens typically across the borders, especially the global south has been the major generator of the carbon credits, and the west has been the buyers of the carbon credits because of their robust compliances in place already. Now, there are a number of projects. There are about 200 type of projects which can be incentivized using carbon credits. Some of them are renewable energy projects, waste handling projects. There can be nature-based projects, community projects. There are energy efficiency projects, and etc. The list goes on. We talk about the evolution of the carbon credit. So this entire system was typically put in place by UNFCCC in 1992. I'd quickly take... So a couple of important milestones that were there in the past for carbon credits. One was Kyoto Protocol, where this emission trading system was introduced and the CDM took its shape. And then the other one was the Paris Agreement, which saw the introduction of the Article 6 and the introduction of the 1.5 degree centigrade target that we have for us for 2030. Now, the important point is why carbon markets matter. Now, carbon markets has the potential to put a price on the pollution, as in it makes the pollution expensive, and it rewards the decarbonization activity that you're doing. So it has the potential, which we call the internalizing the cost of carbon emission. So it has the potential to put a price on the pollution, and it makes decarbonization attractive by adding on different financial benefits to it. Second, it mobilizes the fund, the climate finance, which we've already seen. A lot of international organizations has been working, especially in the LDCs, to mobilize this fund, to fund a lot of climate projects, which are in turn generating carbon credits and further supporting these projects. Especially, these projects are in fact benefiting the communities as well. So these co-benefited projects have been attracting a lot of funds. So it has mobilized the funds from the polluters towards the countries which are underdeveloped or in the process of developing, and at the same time taking care of the community benefit and the emission targets. And thereby it also accelerates the decarbonization, and it makes the R&D and innovation attractive. It bridges the global north and south divide. Basically, it makes the emission a shared opportunity. Now, more and more corporates, in fact, are coming forward, especially from the time when ESG has been made a compliant. A lot of ESG disclosures. A lot of corporates have set their own internal net zero targets, and they have been buying carbon credits to take care of their residue emissions. And not just that, they are not just even buying and forgetting. They are even, in fact, coming forward to put their fund into a carbon credits project and thereby generate carbon credits and trade it. So with more and more corporate awareness that is coming up, the carbon credits market is growing. Just some numbers here in terms of what is the size of global carbon market and the Indian carbon market. There have been a couple of systems already in place which are doing quite positively in the voluntary carbon and the compliance carbon market space. Especially if we talk about the compliance carbon markets, EU ETS has outperformed itself. Especially if we talk about the EU ETS last year. So basically, EU ETS is an internal system of Europe where they have put a cap on the overall emissions, and they decrease their cap year on year. And there are a couple of things that are internally there. The companies can buy the allowances, basically permission to do a certain amount of emission. Internal trading happens of these allowances. And basically this has sort of pushed the prices of the carbon credits higher. Last year we saw one carbon credit priced at about 100 euros. That is 1 ton of emission reduction that happened would get you 100 euros in your pocket. So that's what is the power of carbon market. So basically this entire system made the energy transition or the technology transition cheaper as compared to polluting or continue to use the conventional practices. So one such example has been EU ETS, and a lot of other compliance markets have been developing across the globe, especially even in India. We are working on our Indian carbon market, which are on the lines of EU ETS as well. Just some price trend here for you to understand how much 1 ton of emission reduction can benefit your project. Now, the carbon prices or the price of the carbon credits depend on a number of factors. One such factor is the kind of technology. Another factor is the location of your project. So if you are located in an LDC, the benefits that your project is going to do is going to be comparatively higher than the same project situated in a country which is comparatively developed. Another factor is the kind of benefit or the co-benefits that the project is bringing with itself. So these are some of the factors that drives the prices of the carbon credits, and here are some of the range of the kind of project corresponding the carbon credits price. Now, what has brought the momentum? So we have seen that carbon market, especially the voluntary carbon market, has seen a great pick up, especially because a lot of, as I said, corporates, governments are becoming aware of the net zero target. Especially there has been a demand or an expectation from the investors' point of view. The customers are becoming aware that, there have been an awareness of the climate friendly product or a product which is low emission intensity. So this has been driving the momentum of the carbon markets. Along with that, there has been a shift or pivot from the quantity-based carbon credits to quality-based carbon credits, and we are seeing a lot of projects coming out which are not just doing the emission reduction, but have been benefiting the community, let's say in terms of gender equality, inclusion, jobs creation, etc. So there has been a pivot from the quantity-based to the quality-based carbon credits. So that's also something that is driving the carbon markets, voluntary carbon markets. Then there has been a lot of progress we have seen in terms of governance frameworks and credibility. A lot of new rating agencies have been formed which are rating the projects of the carbon credits and actually telling us the credibility of the carbon credits that are generated, and thereby it's helping us in the price discovery of the carbon credits. So that is something that is also pushing the carbon markets, especially the voluntary carbon markets, to grow further. So carbon markets has the potential of the energy transition by being an economic catalyst, because it brings additional revenue to your project if it's in any way doing any sort of emission reduction. It is a technical catalyst. It has helped a lot in the technological innovations. It makes R&D attractive. And not just that, it has even led to the transfer of technology easier. For example, JCM is something, joint crediting mechanism is something that we have recently signed with Japan, which is not just going to help us get the clean technologies from Japan, but we'd also be able to generate carbon credits, and the Japan government is going to buy these carbon credits from us to meet their internal targets. And then not just that, these projects, if has the potential to benefit the society, gender inclusion, job creation, or benefits on any other fronts, the carbon credits are priced higher, and such projects are then made more attractive and more feasible through the carbon credits. Now, these are some of the pillars of credibility of the carbon credits. I'd quickly go through them. So the project has to be real. It has to be additional, as in the project must require the assistance of the carbon credits or the revenue from the carbon credits to sustain. Otherwise, it should not be able to sustain. So basically, the projects should not be able to stand alone on themselves, is something that is called additional. So the project has to be additional. The impact has to be measurable as compared. So basically, we calculate the baseline, as in if this project wouldn't have been there, what is the conventional practice, or what is the general practice in that region? For example, if we talk about solar projects, the same amount of electricity, if would have been produced by coal, what could have been the emissions? So basically, we calculate that. It should be verifiable, and a lot of regulatory frameworks are already there in the compliance markets. In the voluntary market, there have been a lot of accredited VVB bodies which verify the carbon credits. It should be permanent, as in the impact should be permanent, and the project risk should be minimal, and it should be unique to take care of the double counting, as in you cannot claim two or more environmental commodity benefits on the same generation or on the same activity. So it should be unique, and there should be avoidance of the double counting. And to navigate or to take care of the credibility of the carbon credits, there have been a lot of reforms that are coming up, especially the integration of AI technology to better trace blockchains. We have seen in the recent time to better trace and for the better transparency of the issuance of the carbon credits and trading of the carbon credits. And along with that, we've also seen a lot of governance frameworks. For example, ICVCM coming forward with a lot, its own integrity frameworks. So we are seeing a lot of reforms that are happening to cater or to make the voluntary carbon markets robust and more credible. Okay, I'll quickly go to the Indian carbon market space. So Indian carbon market space, so we have our own internal net zero target of 2070. And for that, carbon credits market do have a great potential. Especially we are now in the process of framing our internal Indian carbon market, which is the Indian compliance market, where the government has already put an emission intensity target, keeping the baseline of 23-24 as the baseline to reduce their emission intensity on some hard to abate sectors. So that has already been happened, and a lot of methodologies have already been introduced, and the nodal agency, which is BEE, And CERC have already been in the process of developing different methodologies, and we are expecting the Indian carbon market to go full-fledged, launch full-fledged next year onwards. So Indian carbon market, basically they have been some phases. So there was a time when CDM on the time around 2005 there was CDM where India had the largest number of projects, and a lot of RE projects from India were incentivized. But around 2012, when Europe discarded the credits of India and China due to a lot of reasons, because RE was already incentivized, there were a lot of policies, and there was a good penetration rate, the market crashed drastically. But now, at present, it's time for the new technologies to grow and incentivize themselves to take the full benefit of the carbon credits and further make themselves attractive and beneficial. So the idea is to understand the potential of carbon markets, not just to earn that extra revenue on your clean project, but how we can do the energy transition, make the energy transition easier. For example, I'd give you our own example. So we entered into the green hydrogen, and then we decided to get into the fuel cell market. And one of the reasons has been the potential of policies, and one such thing is carbon markets, because it has huge potential to make these new clean technologies feasible in going forward, and thereby it can really help towards achieving our net zero targets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avantika. Let's proceed with the panel discussion. You can stay already on the stage, yes? Because we'll have panel discussion. Sorry? Okay. So can we switch back to our presentation, please? Because we have still 30 minutes. So it's so amazing to have this additional hub in our club. And we'll start now the first global local synergies in carbon trading and climate finance inaugurational high-level panel discussion. So Avantika, I invite you once again to take a place. You prefer this? Yes? I would like to invite, so Prince Nari said that as we don't have so much time, he would like to skip this presentation, but we discussed a lot with Prince Nari about the opportunities in Cambodia, and already they discussed with Avantika on collaboration in the country, so the job was done. Yes, and I would like to invite Deepak Zade, Vice President, Green Energy Infrastructure, Industry and Infrastructure and TÜV Süd. So Deepak, if you can remove the badge, please. And actually, Deepak is a friend of my very close friend, Thomas from Germany. So best regards to Thomas Weiss. Yes, Thomas, when you will see this video, special regards also from Mr. Deepak. So please take a place next to Avantika. I would like, so Corey, he prepared presentation actually, 5 minutes video, later we will show. I would like to invite Christy Cash, research lead, low carbon economy at Council of Energy, Environment and Water. And Rajesh, unfortunately, he cannot attend, but Alexis, I think is here. Yes, Alexis. So we have quite interesting people at the panel, experts from the sector, but also Alexis, he looks so young, yes, but he's more than 20 years in the renewable energy sector, working at the leading companies in Europe, now in China, for one of the biggest battery storage companies. So he will share his point of view, you know, how these carbon markets actually can bring additional value to the projects. And we have one more person, Rash. So Rash, I would like to invite you. Rash. Rash is always, you see, like making some business. But actually, he would like to introduce me later, chairman of one of the biggest companies, his friend. So he's making also a job for CBC. So Rash will present a point of view from experience of the law company. And I will also sit in the panel, but Avantika, you are the boss, yes. So you will moderate the panel discussion. Maybe if I have some additional questions, I will add. Yes, so we are everybody in the panel. Prince Nari already, he already agreed on collaboration on carbon markets in Morocco. So he said that this time he will skip because we don't have so much time for the panel discussion. So please.
All right. I think we'd straight away dive into the discussion. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you to join us in this panel discussion. So the topic of our panel discussion would be global local synergy in climate finance and carbon trading. And we have experts from the policy background, project developers, VVB, and the research think tanks. I think I'd start with Mr. Deepak, who's from the VVB, which is validation and verification background. I think you'd agree that credibility and quality of carbon credits has an important role to play to develop a robust carbon credits market. What challenges have you seen in the past to cater to the integrity of the carbon markets or a carbon credit project? At what reforms do you think should come, especially in the developing Indian carbon markets, to take care of the credibility of the carbon credits?
Thank you for having us here. As all of you are aware, TÜV is one of the oldest validation verification body working for various platforms which were shared in the previous presentation, which includes voluntary as well as non-voluntary markets. To answer your question, like VVBs play an important role of validating claims, green claims by any stakeholder, and that's where then they can use that validations report for issuance of the credits and then ultimately use for commercial purpose or even for their internal net zero targets. The challenges is, of course, data becomes very important in the entire validation process. So, particularly in India, we have a fragmented data source. It's not fully automated, it's not fully manual, it is somewhere in between. And data becomes a background for any validation process. And if that source itself is fragmented, naturally the entire mechanism has to be looked into very differently. Second challenge what we are facing nowadays is mostly MRVs are coming with the digital platforms. So before digital platform, it was more of our role was more of a data checkers. Yeah, we used to check data, issue the NCs, get the rectification, and so on and so forth. But now with the addition of digital tool, there is another element got added in the validation process that we need to validate the digital platform also, like the algorithm, sampling mechanism, whether the results are coming accurate, otherwise. So there is an element got added. So the validation process, which was more of a data verification earlier, has become now more of a system verification. So we need to validate not only data but system as well. So naturally, to cater these all challenges, we need to have capacity building within the validation agency like us, who can capture these challenges and ensure that the validation report or the certificate what we are issuing is factual, it's transparent enough. So, and then another challenge what we face is the data traceability. Yeah, so we don't have traceability of the data also. So these are few of the key challenges that we are facing in day-to-day work, and actually we have to agile enough to counter that and come out with the transparent certification.
Okay. I'd also like to understand, so we are in the process of developing our Indian carbon market. So do you think we are prepared, Indian carbon market is prepared to align with the global integrity frameworks that we have in place right now?
Yeah, we have a very good step taken by government to have our own carbon credit mechanism. So when it's a very new mechanism, that's good, but then it's a very new mechanism. And all the mechanisms that you have shown in your presentation, they are quite matured. You know, they are here from say last 10, 12 years or so. So any mechanism to get established needs to spend some time to get that kind of maturity. Naturally, during each version, the next version will have a smaller cycle time. But still, Indian trading mechanism is the new one. We need to definitely develop it, make it more matured, so for international standards to comply with. I think the key challenge that we are going to face going forward is the implementation of this mechanism and the governance of implementation around that. MRV also will be one of the key topic here to see that how the implementation and MRV goes into. But as I said earlier, every mechanism has this phase. It has to go through. And since we are in a way late entrant in this particular trading mechanism, our lead time should be shorter enough.
Right, I agree. It's going to take us some time to for our Indian carbon market to reach to its full maturity, and there's going to be a lot of learning as well. I mean, through the process. With that, I'd like to go to Christy. Christy, how do you think how voluntary carbon market and Indian carbon market, which is upcoming Indian carbon market, are going to coexist? What can be the challenges? Do you think what can be the symbiotic relationship is going to be there? How do you see it?
Hi, I'm Christy, and thank you, Avantika, for that question. So, I'm from the Council on Energy, Environment, and Water, and we work on impacting sustainable development at scale through data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach. So, coming to the question on how does India see on balancing growth along with its decarbonization goals. So something very important that we see right now is that India is coming out with the CCTS scheme, which has offset market within it, and it also has the compliance market. For the growth narrative of India, because we are a developing economy and our industries will still need to grow, what we see is that our design elements are a little different from the rest of the ETSs in the world. So we have adopted an intensity-based baseline and credit approach in which the targets are set at the output level. So for each ton of output that increases for an industry, the target will be for that ton and not an absolute cap on the entire industry. So that kind of indicates that the growth narrative or the growth of each of these industries are being kept as a central approach along with the decarbonization that comes. So we do not stop our growth, but we keep decarbonizing at the output level for each industry. Now, one more point I would like to highlight here is for industries, this compliance market and the starting of the compliance market gives a market signal that, okay, now we are moving towards transition and it's aligned with our climate neutrality goals of 2070. And so hard to abate sectors and other industrial sectors that are within the compliance market currently will start transitioning through these compliance cycles and they will get the market signal so that they can transition more smoothly. Some of the important things to remember when it comes to the efficacy of the compliance market is that the heterogeneity in the targets. We see that there are around, there are so many different industries and every industry has a different potential for mitigation. And there are some particularly hard to abate industries and there are some industries which will encounter lower costs for transitioning. So ensuring heterogeneity in the targets is important for diverse set of industries. Second is when we think about compliance market, we see that the CBAM and other border carbon adjustment mechanisms are knocking at our door, and they may they may come up with becoming as a trade barrier for India. So we need to kind of understand how to mitigate this risk, and compliance market can be a great tool for being able to mitigate risks associated with trade. And also we see that when the transition happens, it means that many industries will have to uh, transition into such energy efficiency systems which will need access to finance and access to various kind of technologies, which has to be supported by the government of India, so that uh, so many industries can sustainably and smoothly transition through the compliance market. And that is, I think, what a strategic instrument like the compliance market is supposed to do. It's supposed to decarbonize at the lowest possible cost. That is what is my answer to the balancing of growth and the decarbonization and narrative. Second, if we talk about these two different kinds of mechanisms, like if we know that the voluntary carbon market and the compliance carbon market are entirely different markets. The compliance carbon market are mandated for obligated industries and entities, and the voluntary carbon market has no mandates, and anybody can take up projects and develop projects in there. But we see that the CCTS very strategically is promoting both offset mechanism as well as compliance mechanism. And this can be a very important lever for India, because what we see is that the compliance market will decarbonize heavy industries, but where will the climate finance come from? Where will the local community benefits and green jobs and SDG aligned outputs come from? That comes from the voluntary carbon market. And the voluntary carbon market can provide the accessory complementary benefit to the other industries to be able to transition. So they can be very easily the two sides of the same coin. But also there's this point on, okay, are we talking about allowing offsets within the compliance market? Because right now there are 34 ETSs in the world, 38 ETSs in the world, and out of that 24 ETSs already has some kind of inclusion of the offset market within their ETS. So this is a very strategic decision that the government has to take, and it only comes once we understand how the compliance mechanism cycles are going. So if the stringency is low, if the targets are easier to achieve, I don't think there is any need for offsets to be included at that point, because offsets is supposed to provide a low cost option for the compliance market. But as stringency increases, we can see that the offset market might become an important cost benefit for heavy industries. But two things has to be determined: when and how much. When will offsets be allowed? When does the stringency come to that place where offsets are going to be allowed? And what percentage of offsets will be allowed? And it may be that offsets might not be allowed for quite a long time. And it may be that the government sees fit later on in their compliance cycles when and how to include offsets. So yeah.
Right, right. So talking about the transition, since you've been involved with the ministry, be nodal agencies in the designing of the Indian carbon market, and you've been also involved with a lot of research papers around the carbon markets that have been published. What do you think? How is this transition going to be? Is it going to be a smooth transition? What is going to be the challenges that are maybe faced from a project developer's point of view? What challenges that do you see from the project developer's point of view? Christy.
Okay, so if I'm talking about the voluntary carbon market, we see that India has great experience in the voluntary carbon market. It has experience from CDM, it has VCM, it has, till 2022, it was around 17% of the global supply. So our project developers are well versed with how the voluntary carbon market works. Now, with the ICVCM and other integrity principles coming in place and buyers demanding more credible, robust projects, I think our suppliers are ready to provide more high integrity projects. Number two is now with the operationalization of Article 6 mechanisms like 6.2, 6.4, we see that, and even with the signing of the JCM deal with Japan that India did very recently, we see that there is going to be some kind of export of high integrity offsets through bilateral trades too. And also there is going to be some amount of new technology transfer from those countries. So that is again a very good signal for the offset market and from the for project developers who are working in these kind of green hydrogen or like these high integrity, low feasibility, high integrity sort of projects, and so high hanging fruit projects, right? And then from the compliance market perspective, we see that what the Indian government is doing is that we are transitioning from PAT to the CCTS compliance. So we have some amount of experience in how PAT cycles were going, and we are going to use that experience for better structuring our compliance mechanism. So in all these three kind of markets, we see there's some amount of institutional strengthening already happening. And of course, there has to be more strengthening in the future for us to be able to reach climate neutrality by 2070.
Right. So transition is going to take some time, but I think we are standing at a great point in time where we have some success stories in the compliance market and some failure stories as well to learn from and to move successfully towards a successful carbon market. Now, I'd like to move on to Mr. Raj, who comes from a legal background, very, very strong legal background. From a legality and regulatory point of view, do you think our Indian system is aligned to take care of the climate finance and carbon trading that we are planning?
That's a wonderful question. So Pooja was also asking me, what is carbon market? Commodity, from the audience I want whether carbon market is a commodity or it is not a commodity. Yes or no? Yes. All right. So if it is a commodity, then supply and demand has to be matched. Government of India is working on both the angles. And if Pooja asked me the question, what is carbon market? So if demand side you talk, I will tell you to remember three words. First word is renewable purchase obligation. So in the year 2003, Government of India amended an act, or a new act was made, Electricity Act 2003, and it provided for renewable RPO, renewable purchase obligation, which says simply that distribution companies have to purchase mandatorily certain amount of renewable energy. That was the direction. But the Supreme Court was ahead of the Government of India. It said that this obligation for distribution company is not limited to distribution company. It extends to captive power consumers and also open access consumers in electricity market. So Supreme Court of India widened the carbon market, number one, RPO. That was the first demand side initiative from the Government of India. Second initiative come after 2016, tariff policy. It was amended and it was provided that RGO, first was RPO, renewable purchase obligation, then second was RGO, renewable generation obligation. So Government of India said that every generating station, thermal, has to produce 40% of, in megawatt terms, energy from renewable sources. That means if there is a thermal power plant of 100 megawatts, it has to mandatorily create a 40 megawatts of solar plant by 2025, compulsory. If you are unable to produce, if you are unable to create, then you have to purchase whatever carbon credits we are creating. But there was a challenge. The challenge was that the climate change is not an issue of all big power companies. It is a democratic issue. We are all affected by that. So there comes a third initiative of Government of India. It is called Renewable Consumption Obligation. Renewable Consumption Obligation says, if you have 100 kilowatts hours or 100 kilowatts of electricity connection you have taken, so let us assume large hospital, university or a factory, you have to consume minimum amount of renewable energy compulsory. So now it is democratized. But there was another challenge. Who will do funding for that? So now Government of India is discussing Renewable Finance Obligation, RFO. So it started with Renewable Purchase Obligation, then it was Renewable Generation Obligation, then it was Renewable Consumption Obligation, now it is Renewable Finance Obligation. This is demand side. All right. Let us talk about supply side. Indian carbon market is fragmented. There is no one carbon market in India. There are 5 carbon markets in India. So first carbon market was created because of Kyoto Protocol. So 2002, Government of India assented to Kyoto Protocol and then said, okay, let's move ahead. And it was a success story actually initially. Till 2012, it was a success story. So it was, I call it international carbon market. Number first carbon market. Second, Rajasthan said that I will comply with renewable purchase obligation, I will generate more energy from renewable sources. But Delhi said, no, I cannot do it. I don't have land. Delhi is a city. It does not have land to produce solar. They said, I cannot fulfill renewable purchase obligation. So then 2009, a mechanism was made which is called Renewable Energy Certificate. So if somebody produces 1 megawatt hour of solar electricity, he gets 1 renewable energy certificate. So Rajasthan started collecting renewable energy certificates. Delhi said, I will purchase renewable energy certificate from Rajasthan and do the compliances. I am just giving an example for understanding. So second carbon credit mechanism is renewable energy certificate. First was international carbon credit. Second is renewable energy certificate, REC. But there was a third also, which is called e-certs, energy saving certificates, जैसा मैडम ने explain करा है, ठीक है? And it was, and सबके जो measurements हैं, see, commodity का क्या है? It has to be measured. If it is not measured, then it is not a commodity. Measurement भी अलग अलग है. REC का measurement अलग है, carbon credit का the measurement is different. For e-cert also measurement is different. Okay? So third component. Fourth component is, it is called green credit. So green credit rules was released by Government of India. It is work in progress. We don't know what is the measurement. We are just deciding, we are identifying what, see, 70% climate change is happening because of energy sector, 30% is happening because of other sectors like maybe agriculture or cattle farming. So green credits become important actually. That is the fourth market. Now fifth market has been created by Government of India, and that it is domestic carbon market. That is also work in progress. So we have to remember 4 words for demand side: renewable purchase obligation, renewable generation obligation. What is the third one? Renewable consumption obligation, and fourth? Renewable finance obligation. All right. And we have to understand 5 carbon credits. First is international carbon credit. Second is RECs, renewable energy certificate. Third is e-certs, energy saving certificates. Fourth is green credit. And fifth is domestic carbon credits. So if you understand these 4 words and 5 words, you will understand the entire carbon market. With this, hope it is useful to all of you. Back to you.
Great, great. I'd like to also understand from you, let's talk about this carbon market which is under development right now, which is Indian carbon market. From a legality and regulatory point of view, what are your suggestions in terms of maintaining that credibility of the system and to make sure that double counting doesn't happen? For example, if the same project has been taken forward for RPO and if the same project is taken, so basically double counting doesn't happen. So from a legality point of view, is there something that is under development or going on and has been a discussion, part of the discussion for this carbon market?
Remember, Ramayana is the storybook of India. It says, Jaan jaye par vachan na jaye. Truthfulness is very essential in India. Remember, we used to, if we want a certificate, we used to go to a government gazetted officers earlier. Now the government says, just self-certified it. I trust you. Similarly, the carbon market, Indian carbon market will be more robust than American carbon market, more trustworthy than European carbon market, much better than any other carbon market. There are reasons for that. First reason is regulatory compliance. It is a strict regulatory mechanisms where a semi-regulator, which is called Grid Controller of India, will maintain certificates. So it is not like that I decide I want 2 carbon credits for the same work. It will not happen. Remember, it is not possible because Grid Controller of India has experience, past experience of RECs, Renewable Energy Certificate. It knows how to certify it. Clear hai? Koi issue nahi hai, number one. Number two, regulations will be made by Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is making regulations since 1998. It has wide experience in regulatory affairs. So regulations will not be issues, it will be debated, discussed as per law actually. So वहाँ पे problem खत्म हो गई है. Now in the driving seat, earlier in the carbon market we did not have any driver. So 6 ministries were working in carbon market. We were all confused which ministry to approach, whether petroleum and natural gas, power ministry or renewable energy ministry, which coal ministry, who is the... Now there is a driver, there is a pilot, which is Bureau of Energy Efficiency, BEE. You don't have to run around. Just go to BEE, suggest whatever you want to suggest. They will introduce it in the meetings and you will get it done actually. So Indian carbon market will be the most trustworthy carbon market in the entire world actually. So just don't doubt it. Let's move forward with that.
I really hope that it does happen.
Because actually we are asked by the organizers to be very fast. So first initiative before last questions, as Raj, you are so active and also Avantika, I would suggest we will make a follow-up webinar, yes, that we can go deeply in the topic, and I hope that our colleagues will join us also, yes. And so this is first initiative, and second, Avantika also, we can invite speakers to our hub, yes, so we can work on the topics together. I didn't know that it's so complicated actually. So for me, it's also a learning process. So I would suggest maybe Avantika last questions to Alexis and maybe summary, yes? And then we'll not stop today. We'll continue with more deep webinar that maybe we can use Tila and your databases also, and we can share through our internal databases. Also, we'll ask organizers of REI to give their contact details. Yes, so maybe Avantika last question to Alexis, yes?
I can, if you want, just as a summary on the decarbonization, tell you from the battery side and the quality of the assets, the priorities that they're being, because on the decarbonize, when you have a timeline, the quality of the assets are very, very important. And batteries, Cornex, the company I'm working on the battery side, the idea is to transform the assets and provide services and save future investments on grid, on upgrades, because decarbonization has 2 main pillars. One is the timeline, is how long it will take to achieve something, because the faster you can do it, the more that the CO2 emission, of course. And the second one is the quality of the assets. The quality of the assets are, nowadays you have the intermittency on the renewable side. The battery is becoming quite critical because to let's say, close the circle, you need a battery. So pretty much the wind project or the solar project can function as a microgrid or even a small utility. So you will not be needing upgrades, and at the same time, you'll be addressing immediate needs on energy, and they will be helping you abating the CO2 emissions. And on the quality of the grid, also here, for example, in India, you have long distances that transmissions are very important. So the backbone of the grid in India, there are some regions in which will take years to either be able to address that congestion. So the moment that you add batteries to the equation, you pretty much solve a problem much faster. You provide a menu of options that no other asset can. Suddenly, an idle solar or wind plant can transform in ancillary systems, peak shaving, are doing arbitration on the tariffs. So I think that the more the technology gets involved and the more that you can connect all the dots within the renewable space, you will be able to achieve decarbonization much faster.
Right, right. I mean, this low carbon transition towards a low carbon economy and the development of the power transmission ecosystem goes hand in hand. Okay, all right. I think because we have short of time, we can wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your responses and your inputs here. I'd give the floor to Thomas.
So thank you so much, and I would like to ask all the speakers to give applause to Avantika. Okay, applause for Avantika. And thank you so much. So last thing, in terms of logistics, always yes. So this was our first forum, and I would like to thank you because I knew it's not an easy topic, and our leaders in the clean tech industry, clean tech water industry, clean hydrogen industry, they really need more awareness, yes, because they don't even realize how big opportunities are related to the carbon credits and all these carbon markets. On the other hand, also, we can give you guys connections with the leaders around the world from high levels, so maybe also you can use their inputs, yes, in your job. And we can work together because you remember our motto, together we are stronger, yes? So as follow-up, we'll organize together, Avantika, if you agree, the webinar, maybe within 1 month period of time. We will ask also REI to be part of this and partner on that. And then you will be, of course, invited to continue more on details. So thank you so much. And thank you so much once again, REI, for having us. Here. Maybe you can switch on, once again our slide, okay? Our presentation. I will just put our slide behind. One more time, Okay, so let's make a family photo together.